Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, welcoming you to yet another show of information, entertainment, and an all-around good time. Thank you for joining me. This show is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, as well as videoed on YouTube. So if you haven't checked out any of those formats, then do so. I think you'll find all of them equally entertaining and amusing. This week, we are going to get right into it here. We have another pair of special guests this week, and I am just pleased as punch to have them on board. I've been working on this one for actually a couple months now. I first met Ross Blocher out in Los Angeles when I went out to CFI and did a book signing for my book, Scientology A to Z, an insider's guide to what Scientology is really all about. And by the way, if you haven't read that book or didn't know that I did that, it's available on Amazon as an ebook, audiobook, as well as paperback. So I met him out there because he came to my book signing, and Ross Blocher is actually a podcaster with Carrie Poppy. And I'll explain a little bit more about their podcast in just a moment. But first, let's talk about or mention here that, Scientology is in the media all the time. I don't know that there's a day that goes by that you can't find some kind of press somewhere. And of course, Tony Ortega, Mike Rinder, put out regular daily blogs on the subject. So there's always some kind of news circulating about it. In the media in general, you're going to, it wanes, it waxes and wanes, and it's about to wax pretty substantially because Louis Theroux, a British documentarian, has completed his film, My Scientology Movie, and that has now released in the UK. People are seeing it, and I believe in January it will be coming here to the US. More than a little annoyed that it's taking so long to get distributorship over here, but them's the breaks when you're in the US. Australia and UK often get first run on a lot of things when it comes to cinema. So that movie's now out, and I'm thinking that we're going to be seeing quite a bit about Scientology in the headlines again, just like we did when Going Clear came out. But those stories that come out about Scientology tend to be fairly sensationalistic, and there's generally a lot of hype about Tom Cruise and his connection with Scientology because celebrity media just can't get enough of bringing down celebrities, and they think that Scientology is wacky and kooky enough that it always should mention Tom Cruise, and there's some truth to that, but they tend to be fairly shallow stories, and I'm almost routinely disappointed by the media coverage of Scientology. When Ross and Carrie decided to take on Scientology, they decided to do it a little differently. Now, Ross and Carrie have a podcast called Oh No, Ross and Carrie, with an exclamation point at the end. And it's a skeptical podcast, and they broadcast out of Los Angeles through the Maximum Fun Network. That's what distributes their podcast. And they have actually explored Scientology in a level of detail that few others have ever tried. They actually did a 9-part series on Scientology, and the way that Ross and Carrie go about looking into the various subjects or fields that they look into is they don't just do a Google search. They don't just talk to a couple exes or current members of whatever group it is that they're looking at. They actually go undercover in a way. They don't lie if directly asked whether they're podcasters or journalists. They'll say that they are. But they will actually go and immerse themselves in whatever subject it is that they're looking into. And they've not only done this with Scientology, but they've also gone into and used Ouija boards. They've done reverse aging, cryotherapy, essential oils, all sorts of various topics they dive into, and now Carrie, I believe, has actually become a Reiki master or something. I mean, they've really gone into this in detail when they go into something, and it's impressive. And their motto for their show is, "We show up so you don't have to." So they'll go do these exploratory actions. And in the case of Scientology, they actually went to the LA Church of Scientology, signed up for classes, did auditing, and podcasted about it for about 2.5 months over this 9-issue series. And or 9-episode, I should say, not 9-issue. And then during the course of doing that, of course, they got found out, and then Scientology eventually caught on. And their last episode, they detail what happened and how they kind of got the boot. And it's a fascinating series of podcasts, and very, very, very accurate, very, very detailed. I was impressed by it. So it was that since I met Ross out in LA, I decided to arrange them to come onto my podcast. And I believe at some point in the not too distant future, I will also be featured on their podcast. And I'll let all of you folks know about that when it happens. So without further ado, here are Ross and Carrie. I was just listening to the last episode in your guys' series, 9 podcasts on Scientology. I mean, that is like, wow, the detail that you guys got into was really impressive, actually, as a former member, as somebody who has watched a lot of media, a lot of people go into and talk about Scientology. It was really impressive to see what you guys did with it. I actually really want to congratulate you on that, because very few people go as in-depth. In fact, I don't know anybody who has gone as in-depth as you guys have.
Oh man, that's great to hear, especially from someone who has so much internal experience, because of course we just went in kind of knowing what we did as regular citizens and kind of went as far as we could, and really have no way of knowing how far that is. So it's great to hear that it felt in depth.
Oh, very much so. And also, of course, I have to congratulate you on your memory, because you guys were coming up with the details that were like, wow, these guys really turn on the recorder. It was really, really, I'm telling you, it was impressive.
Well, thank you. We've gotten really good at taking copious notes and just convincing people that we are very astute students instead of taking notes through a podcast.
Or maybe we're just clear and we have perfect recall.
Yeah.
I think that's actually it. I think that's actually it. Yeah, you just, and I don't know if you ever found this out, but in Scientology there is, there used to be at least a natural clear, where you were just always clear. And that could very well be the case with you guys.
Oh, so you kind of test out, I guess.
Yeah, basically, yeah. You don't find out about it really until you've gotten a lot of auditing and paid a lot of money and that sort of thing. But, it's not like you can just walk in off the street and go, hey, I'm clear, and they throw you on a meter and go, oh, hey, well, you are clear.
Right. Now that you've paid $40,000, hey, you know what? You were clear all along.
Exactly. That's exactly how it generally rolls.
We did, however, get an email from someone who was like, can you solve this mystery for me? One time, a Scientologist walked up to me off the street, tried to get me to go in, had me, answer all these questions, and then said, I don't have anything to help you. You can go along now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, that's a first. I don't know.
That's either a really high compliment or a quick dismissal.
Yeah. I said, I wonder if somehow they thought you had said something SPE or something that freaks them out rather than complimentary. But maybe they were secretly clear.
Maybe so. They probably said something that freaked the person out. Is probably what happened. Either they, dropped the Xenu bomb, or they said something that just gave the person the impression that they weren't on the up and up. Mm-hmm. Or the other possible scenario is the person, the Scientologist, just could not find a hook. They couldn't find that ruin that they look for. The thing that the person wants to change or improve.
Right.
Because that's all they've got. If they can't get that connection with you, that you say to them something that you're vulnerable about,
right,
then they can't suck you in.
Although they tried their damnedest with me and didn't really find anything, and still were just like, take this class.
Yeah,
well,
Carrie's notoriously resistant.
Yeah, they might punt and just go, well, we don't know what your ruin is exactly or whatever. They won't say those words, but they might just go, well, everybody does better with class. Yeah,
sure.
Everybody could improve with it,
Yeah.
So you guys, okay, so let's talk about you guys for a little bit, because I'm fascinated to find out. First off, what are your backgrounds? What your education and your how'd you guys get into debunking this stuff, or looking into these different subjects that you get into?
Sure.
Who wants to go first? Go on, Carrie.
Oh, sure. Okay. Let's see. Well, we're both were evangelical Christians growing up. We didn't know each other then. But we actually met in a skeptical book club. And so I found my way there via leaving my own religion and becoming more of a critical thinker. And while I was there, I met Ross, and we decided actually to go to the Kabbalah Center together, just because we thought that sounded just like a great way to spend a Thursday. We heard about this. We heard about this talk. We thought that sounded so fun, and we realized that all our friends were like, why on earth would you do this? This sounds like a bizarre waste of an evening. And that was just sort of like a light bulb moment for us, was just like, what? Like, this sounds like the best possible thing to do with your day, versus these people who we thought of as sort of our kind, thinking it's the worst thing to do. And we went and we loved it, and we came back and we told all our friends about it, and they loved hearing the story, and we loved telling the story. And that's when we realized, like, oh, we're a little different from like these people who are like us. And we hadn't thought of the podcast then, but we started talking about it, like, how could we kind of turn this into a thing? And podcasting was new-ish.
Ross, oh yeah, when was this? When did this happen?
This was 2011.
Yeah,
this was years ago. Okay.
At that time, I was already listening to a bunch of podcasts and thought, like, oh man, well, can we contribute something new that isn't already being done?
Yeah.
And I think we found that angle, like, okay, well, we actually like to go there and do the thing, and that makes us unusual. Our friends who don't want to go with us want to hear us talk about it, so that might be something new, and we can have fun with it, kind of be humorous, but also, I think, be compassionate and loving, and show that, there's really good things about the people we meet.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you about that for sure. Now, Carrie, what do you do other than this? What was where did you come from that this is your road?
Yeah, well, now I'm a journalist, which really I have the podcast to thank for. I just sort of woke up one day and was like, oh shit, did I accidentally become a journalist? Is that what I do? Yeah, that's what I do. And people were paying me to write about the stuff that Ross and I did, and I just sort of realized it and ended up going to USC for my master's in journalism, and here I am. Now I'm a journalist.
Awesome.
But before that, I was acting, which I still do as well, though it's less of my life than it was then. But it just happened, man. And, which is great, because when I was a kid, my favorite book to read was Harriet the Spy. I read that every year.
Yes, I read that book when I was a kid. Yes.
Okay. And it was another light bulb thing for me when one day I picked that book back up and I was like, oh my God, I am Harriet the Spy. This is my dream. My dream came true. I don't go on people's lawns and look through their windows, but I almost do.
sort of stalking a little bit.
Yeah, I quasi-stalk people. What a happy life.
Nice. And Ross, what about you? What was your road to this?
Yeah, it's a long, strange road. Like Carrie, I began as an evangelical Christian. That was my upbringing. My whole family was. I was raised with literal creationism and a good dose of homophobia. Didn't know anybody who self-identified as an atheist. You know, that was the other, that was the bad thing, or as gay. And when I got to college, I was the president of the Bible study group there, and
Wow.
definitely have a huge store of scriptural knowledge still, you know, that I have to constantly find things to do with. It was just offhandedly, I studied animation, and that is my career now. I work in animation, and that's, you know, my love. I love animation, I love art, and I also love science, and so try to find ways to blend those all the time. But anyways, I was studying that, and I tested out of most GEs, but I had a life science class, and the instructor had recommended these Skeptic Society lectures, and they were for extra credit, and so I saw those and went, oh man, those sound like really interesting topics and kind of controversial. So I started going to these lectures, and I was writing up like detailed reports for my teacher until finally he's like, oh, I get it, Ross, that's fine, you know, I'm glad you like it, you don't need to write up reports for me anymore. And I went for a year and a half, and I was reading the books. I was, meeting these various scientists and, adjacent people. Anyway, so there was this kind of like, crossing of the arms, and, well, I don't like that you're making fun of belief, and, I don't know about that evolution thing. But slowly over time, I started to absorb all these ideas. And I got to this kind of crisis of faith where I really wasn't sure I believed anymore, and had to kind of have it out with God and say, hey, I need to look at the world this way, as if you don't exist. And so that was a huge shift for me. And I didn't want that to be the case. It was definitely just the intellectual matter and me trying to get to the truth of it that kind of led me away from my faith. And I was already married at the time and had a kid, so that's a whole long story. But my wife came along with me, and
Wow.
we're still married, almost 16 years later now. And anyway, so I continued my animation career, but on the side, I had always had not only this evangelical belief, but also an interest in the paranormal. I'd read every book I could on aliens and cryptozoological creatures and ghosts, and, anything I could get my hands on. And so I was still interested in that, and I found the IIG, which is the Independent Investigations Group that offers a cash prize for proof of the paranormal. So I was involved there, and that's at the same place where Carrie and I were going to the book club together, and there were regular lectures. So we kept running into each other, and we found that mutual interest, and that we were the two crazy people who wanted to go experience things firsthand.
Wow. That is a very interesting story. I'm fascinated by the fact that you educated yourself into a position of questioning your faith, because it's been my experience in looking into, from my own experience and from the experience of others who lose their faith in whatever religion, Scientology, evangelical Christian, Mormonism, whatever, that they usually have some kind of something happens to them that makes them question the faith. There's some crisis moment that occurs that causes a questioning, but it doesn't sound like in your experience, was there a crisis, or was it the education that slowly built to this crisis point for you?
In my case, it really was the latter. It really was just the
Wow.
education and a commitment to knowing what was true. And I can't point to anything where I felt God let me down, or where I was upset by it. I mean, I was upset by hypocrisy in the church, but that wasn't. Well, I realized that all of this could be true, and that would have nothing to do with the fact that Christians could be hypocritical. It was purely the statements of the Bible and the factual claims of history, and that's really what led me to that point in my journey. But I'm a very strange atheist, and I still keep all my Christian friends, and I still am part of the church community that I was part of 12 years ago when I left, and I still listen to Christian music from time to time. I don't know. Culturally, I still retain elements of that, and tried not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess.
I think that's awesome. I've always tried to adopt, and people don't believe me, and I've I've had various miscommunications, or as I'm fumbling around through my own journey, and sharing my my ideas and whatnot with my podcast audience or with my YouTube audience. I try to maintain a position of tolerance and understanding toward people who have other beliefs. I think that's really important. It's you ridicule the belief, not the person. I think is the way that I look at it, as the best way to go. Although, what's been your experience in still not being understood about that? Because there's so many believers, just they are their belief, or they seem to feel that if you ridicule their belief, you're ridiculing them. How have you successfully or unsuccessfully dealt with that in your lives or on your podcast?
Well, I think you stated it well. I always kind of flip around that whole love the sinner, hate the sin sort of thing, and say, accept the believer, question the belief, which I think you just kind of stated. And I think that's it. It's important to separate those things and say, you are not your beliefs, because I was the same person when I was a believer, and now I'm that same person, now that I don't have those beliefs. And anybody can move on that spectrum. And we all found ourselves at some point believing things that we no longer do now. And so we're all on that path, and we just have to realize that everyone else is going to be on a different part of their personal path than we are. So I think if you can keep all those things in mind, it just helps you have a little more patience with others. But sometimes you find people who aren't ready to have that conversation. They're just not at that place. And you just kind of move on because it's not the right time.
Yeah,
Fair enough. Carrie, what about you?
Yeah, I think often this is, our fault. It's the fault of the critics. It can be really easy to be talking about these claims and just be sort of at a loss for words and just be like, that's stupid, it's dumb, just because it's so hard to pull apart what is crazy about this. I can't even think of the right words, so I'm just going to say crazy. I'm just going to say nuts. I'm just going to say dumb. And it's not, you're not thinking of the person believing it. You're thinking of the belief. But if you pull back and you look at it from the believer's point of view, well, crazy, nuts, and dumb, those sound like you're talking about them, not about the belief itself. And that sucks, right? That puts the onus on us to be thinking bigger than our intentions. That's too bad. I mean, I wish we didn't have to do that, but we do, I mean, they're the ones who get hurt, not us. So that's our responsibility, and we have to take it seriously. And all that said, I mean, other people in our camp, other critical thinkers, and myself included, I can be guilty of this, just sometimes get frustrated and call people dumb, and we can all be just guilty of making shortcuts in our brain where people see other atheists, other non-believers, and say, well, I've gotten my head bit off by another atheist who was a jerk to me. I'm just going to assume she's going to do the same thing. And, they think that the same way that if I ran into another Raelian, I would assume they'd treat me about the same as the Raelians I've met. Those are kind of fair assumptions, and everyone's just working with the information that they have. So I don't know. I just try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, listen to the criticism they're giving me. And, if I said something in not the best way, just try to take that as okay, maybe you're right. Maybe I just said that sentence indelicately. That doesn't mean anything about me. That doesn't mean that I'm a big old jerk. That just means I said one sentence wrong, and I'm just going to say sorry and move on and not make this a big deal. That's kind of brought me the most success.
Fair enough. Okay, good. All right. Well, let's talk Scientology for a few minutes here.
All right.
Because obviously that's something I know a lot about, and you guys have just found out a whole lot about it. I think it was only about 3 podcast episodes ago for your show that you wrapped up the 9-episode series on it.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And of course, somebody might go, my God, 9 episodes, but I get it. I mean, it's a huge topic. There is so much going on there.
The most we'd ever done before about one topic was, I think, 3 episodes. on Mormons and the Aetherius Society. And all along, our number one request all the time from everybody was, when are you going to do Scientology? Or, I would tell someone on the street about the show. We'd be talking about it. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Have you done Scientology? Like, I'll listen to you when you've done Scientology. And we knew there was so much pent-up demand. And Carrie and I would talk about it all the time, and we were a little nervous, because there's stories about repercussions and stuff, and so we thought we want to be prepared going into this. And I kind of sneakily talked Carrie into doing the personality test, because we were doing an episode on personality tests. So I was like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we went down to the Sea Org and actually took a personality test? And when we got there and they didn't immediately look us up and recognize us, we both thought, okay, this is our chance. We got it. And we're just going to do as much as we can and tell everybody all about it, because this is our one shot.
And surely this will be, a week before they find us out? This ain't no problem. Oh, wait, it took 2.5 months? Oh, crap.
Yep. Yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions out there on the topic, on the subject. They think that if you comment, if somebody makes a comment on a YouTube channel, they're going to do a whole data search on them and start stalking them and stuff. I've had people make some really have some odd ideas about how big brotherish Scientology can be and whatnot, and they just don't understand that it's a very small group of people and they don't target you without reason.
I was gonna ask, is that only just a matter of them not having the manpower to be as stalkery as they want to be?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my cuckoo clock. Okay,
oh, okay. I was wondering what that was.
It's over,
okay,
sorry.
It happens when we record and we have to work around it.
No problem at all. So yeah, no, they are a very tiny group. And when you're talking about the Office of Special Affairs, which I don't think you guys really had any run-in with, you're talking about, the Office of Special Affairs is the church's legal division and investigation division. That's all Sea Org, or mostly Sea Org. And you're talking about 100 people at the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you go all the way up to OSA International. And, they don't have the resources to go hire PIs and follow people around just because they made some nasty comment on YouTube.
Sure, but I would expect them just to Google. This is a 3-second job, Chris.
Oh, no, you'd think. But they, when they're dealing with, this is the other thing that most people don't understand, is that when they are the guys who are dealing with the fact that that Scientology is about to be banned in Russia.
Yeah.
Right? They got court cases in France. They got court cases in Belgium. They got fallout from those court cases that they've had.
Bigger fish to fry.
Much bigger fish. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious though, in relation to them looking us up or not looking us up, as it may happen, are there restrictions on the Sea Org members when they use the internet? Would they not have access to just go straight to Google and look for us?
Absolutely. Very few Sea Org members have unrestricted access to the internet. Very few.
And they're using filtering?
Probably no one you met.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like that. In terms of unrestricted access. When I left in the end of 2012, on the base where you guys went at the big blue buildings, they were just beginning to let the Sea Org members use the internet through a filtered system that's probably a lot like what China does, where they have this firewall and you can't ever find anything that says Xenu or David Miscavige, or you just can't look that stuff up.
And I'm sure that all filters through to the housing as well. So if you live there, okay.
Yeah. Well, you could only really access the signal in the main mess, which is on the first floor of that great big building that has the 2 wings.
Yeah.
Right.
On the first floor of that building is where all the Sea Org members eat. And and the main mess is the main access point for internet, like after hours. If you go up to your room, you may or may not have access to that signal, but it's definitely kept the signal, I think, emanates from the security office, which is in the ground level of that building.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so they keep a tight rein on that stuff, and nobody is supposed to be able to use the internet who hasn't gone through security with a full, what they call a routing form, with a whole approval process, including them installing the filter system on your laptop.
It's exhausting just hearing you describe this.
I know, it's crazy.
And do all those people realize that they're receiving filtered internet? I mean, okay, so they know, and they're just sort of being told we're protecting you, kind of thing.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because well, here's the thing: Sea Org members and Scientologists in general don't want to be exposed to not just bad news or criticism about Scientology. They don't want to be exposed to that upper level confidential material because they feel that it will be literally they feel that it will be psychically damaging to them.
Right.
And they've bought that. They believe it. I used to believe it. Where if I really believed that there were words that I could read, and if those words were in a certain order, right, and they had that key information there, that I could
that would hurt you.
Right, was stimulated and end up dying.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's like that.
Okay, now I'm curious because you always hear the stories in evangelical circles about people being saved by their Bible. Did they pass around stories about people who actually did die because they did stuff like that?
No, because no one's ever died.
So, well, you can make up stories.
That's too bad. What Hubbard did was when he talked about this in the very first time in 1967 in a lecture called RJ67, he said that he, in discovering this material, had broken his back, had broken his arm, had almost died. And he painted this bloody picture of how even if the big guy almost lost his life discovering this information, then look, I'm telling you, it's dangerous stuff and you don't want to mess around with it. And so you only get it if you're ready for it.
Cool. What a cool dude.
Hey there. I just want to take a moment to let you know about a new website that I think you might find useful. I'm sure those of you who are listening to the show right now have been wondering about this mug sitting here that says "Got Logic." And those of you who are watching are wondering, where do I get logic? How do you get your fill? Well, fortunately for you, I have the answers. Introducing the Critical Merchandise web store, hosted by Spreadshirt.com. If you think that facts matter, that critical thinking is not just for breakfast anymore, and you want to let your friends know that their lack of logic is disturbing, then you need look no further than the Critical Merchandise website. By popular demand, I've put these products together for you guys, and I think you'll find all of them helpful and useful reminders to yourself and to others that sense, logic, and reason are something all of us could use a little bit more of in our lives. Check out Critical Merchandise Store by either using the link below on this channel or by looking on sensiblyspeaking.com at the Critical Merchandise link at the top of the page. 100% of the funds raised from your purchases go back to making this show and my YouTube channel a reality, and I really do appreciate your support. Check out Critical Merchandise today. So let me ask you guys a couple more questions here.
Right.
Now,
sorry, we won't keep interviewing
no.
you.
It's all good. I love talking about this stuff. So now, what was after everything you guys did, let's jump to the end real fast and say, what did you walk away from Scientology thinking? What was your takeaway?
My takeaway was I had no idea how boring this religion is. Because you hear about how abusive it can be, and you hear from the true believers how rewarding it can be. But I did not know how truly boring it can be. I mean, it outdoes Mass. It outdoes church service. It outdoes meditate. I've done these mini hour-long meditation services where you literally sit there and do nothing. That's more entertaining. I mean, sitting and auditing for hours in an unpleasant room with halogen lights while Ross makes you recount the story of your dog dying, is unpleasant, but then becomes just unbearably boring. I mean, to the point that like I felt like I was facing my mortality. I was like, this is what I'm doing with my day. I feel like my day is wasted in this deep, meaningful way. Like, I have not done a thing with this day. This day will not amount to anything. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, some people feel this way about weeks or months or years of their life that they spent doing this nonsense. And that's just like a deeply troubling thought to me. The mundaneness, what's that word? Mundaneness?
Mundacity?
Mundacity? Is that it?
Probably.
No, that's lying.
Yeah.
Mundanity? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, thatness of it.
State or quality of being mundane.
Yeah, is awful.
That's interesting that you would highlight the boringness. I did get to, and I feel that I and Carrie have extremely high tolerance for just people sharing strange ideas with us, and I feel that's something that makes me stand out from most of the crowd. Is that sure? I'll listen to your 4-hour sermon, and I'll either I will get something from it or I will be entertained, like picking apart the format in which you present it, and that's the kind of mental. Thing that will go on for me at that time. I did have 2 moments during Scientology where I just got really like upset, like I am here, I don't want to be here, this is getting old, I want out, but I can't get out. And for Scientology to be able to do that to me twice, I think says a lot. But I didn't leave so much with that as just a feeling of like being sad and impressed at the same time. I was really sad because I now kind of look at that building, Sea Org, where we spent most of our, the LA Org, where we spent most of our time, and I see it as being full of a lot of victims of a really cleverly contrived system where there's so many checks and balances. No, just checks. There's so many checks that are like just keeping people doing the same thing over and over and being constantly scrutinized and feeling so much pressure. And still, when I go down there, I see so many people like smoking cigarettes, and that just floors me, with this whole purification rundown thing that you have all these people smoking. But anyways, I feel really sad, and I feel like there's a lot of sadness that goes unexpressed. And at the same time, I'm super impressed with how well L. Ron Hubbard set it up, that's been sustained for so long.
Excellent. Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy within the belief system or within the structure of Scientology that they're trained into not thinking critically about it. Mm-hmm. And it's actually part of the process of the indoctrination of Scientology to learn to not be a critical thinker. In fact, I think it was in your last or second to last episode where you quoted from at the Sunday service, and this is like here's an example of the indoctrination I'm talking about, where they quote from On Personal Integrity, where they go through this whole litany of you should observe and you should observe being observed, and all this. And then they go, but then he cleverly puts in there, and in fact, this is one of the things I'd forgotten about until I was listening to your podcast. But and we should learn to observe, not necessarily critically, and not necessarily with a critical eye, right, or with a skeptic, right. not necessarily a skeptical eye, right, or something, whatever he says there,
right?
But again, he's just subtly reinforcing, don't be critical,
right?
Don't be skeptic.
Right.
Don't necessarily have an open mind. He hates that, right?
Don't actually do it in a useful way.
Exactly.
Not in a way that would at all, contradict or take away my power here.
Right.
Well, exactly. And Scientologists think that litany, that on personal integrity thing, is one of the best things Hubbard ever wrote. They just think it's like this amazing, wonderful thing because they have personal integrity. It's like this
right.
bedrock of solid certainty that they have, and they call that integrity when in fact it's really just a complete and utter lack of critical thinking. And
speaking of contradictions and nice things L. Ron Hubbard wrote, one of those kind of foundational tenets for the church, the statement of human rights, inalienable human rights, is that we have the ability to comment on the beliefs of others. How do they, not let that apply to Scientology itself?
Well, the Scientology is built on this idea that it's the science of certainty. And so you're supposed to be certain about the things that Scientology teaches you. So it sort of establishes itself as a filter through which you look to judge and evaluate the rest of the world. So you would never question Scientology itself.
Because that's the science of knowledge.
Exactly. Probably, maybe a similar analogy that people might be able to think with might be how we are raised as Americans. And so everything that we as Americans do when we look at the world, we look at it as Americans, right?
As Westerners, at least, yeah.
Well, yeah, because we have, in the United States, we have a Bill of Rights. We have this Constitution. And that's what makes us Americans, is really that we are living under this government. But we're indoctrinated from day one growing up in the United States that this is the best government form ever. Right, that this is the pinnacle of human endeavor and governmental forms, and nothing else could possibly be better than this. So, because we're indoctrinated with that from such a young age, it becomes this unconscious filter with which you look at the rest of the world, and you constantly compare UK, Russia, Czechoslovakia, any other country. You'd always be looking at it from, well, they don't have a Bill of Rights.
Right. From an assumption that, well, this is wrong, let's evaluate, let's unpack how it's wrong. Right. So that would be the Scientologist standpoint is, okay, well, they are wrong, let's figure out how they're wrong.
Exactly. It's either, and it's a very, very, very inculcated us versus them mentality that starts almost from day one of going in there, and as you accept it and agree that it works, that attitude becomes stronger and stronger. So what did you guys think was, Carrie, you first, what did you think was the most ridiculous or outrageous thing that you heard in walking in that whole experience?
Oh, I know what that is right off the top of my head. My head that has not been destroyed in a botched abortion. So, yes, one of our ICs, which means in charge for anyone who's listening and doesn't remember, told us that the fetus is so resilient that even if a woman attempts to have an abortion and destroys the head, the physical head of the fetus during that abortion, the fetus will grow the head back, and the baby will still be born.
Of course.
I just burst out laughing. Ross sort of did too. I said, that's not true.
You actually said that in the middle of the...
Well, this was just me and Ross and the IC. We were just asking him some questions. And I don't remember what led to this. We were talking about something about in utero, which of course is very important stuff when you're talking about engrams. It just appeared he had never thought about how there are successful abortions. I mean, if the uterus could regrow under all circumstances, there would be no successful abortions. I mean, we were just watching him just like face that this entire belief set clearly had to be wrong, and just watching him reel as we tried very hard not to laugh. It was extraordinary.
Excellent.
One of Carrie's favorite quotables of mine is that we walked out of there and I said, well, I didn't know that about fetuses, and I still don't.
So, Ross, what was yours?
Geez, I can't top that for just sheer, on-the-face ridiculousness. But one that particularly, I think, irked me was the idea that we are constantly recording everything 57 senses, sensory inputs, and that we, have a perfect record of all of this. I mean, that is just absurd and wrong on its face, because there's so much you could do with that kind of perfect record, and clearly the Scientologists don't have it. They can't point to anyone who does, and it's just the amount of data and the sheer lack of understanding of how the human mind works there. Really, it was such a linchpin to kind of the teachings, and at the same time was just so wrong on its face.
Right. There are so many things, well, not so many, but there are a couple things in Scientology that I now look back and wish, I so wish they were true.
Interesting.
And that's actually one of them. That mechanism. Because
how cool would that be?
Wouldn't that be the most coolest thing ever if you could actually somehow, get access to that level of recall?
Yeah.
Life. I mean, your entire life would be available to you. I mean, that would be your entire education, everything. I mean, so I think there's a lot of wishful thinking that goes on in Scientology with this, where people buy into it because they want to believe it's true. And they don't, speaking for myself for sure, and probably a lot of Scientologists, that they don't go look up or debunk this information because they really want it to be true.
Oh, sure.
So why would they go study something else about the human mind that might give them the idea that that's not true?
Yeah.
When Hubbard is so sure that it is, and is supposed to give you this methodology to be able to access all that recall,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The opposite of motivated reasoning, the unmotivated reasoning.
Right.
No reason to go disprove that.
Exactly. And then using confirmation bias to come up with reasons to believe. On the other end of the spectrum, let's just to be positive as well, because it's easy to ridicule Scientology all day long. But I'm often asked this, and I'm curious about your feedback on it. Did you find anything in your experience with Scientology that you thought would be helpful or useful, or that you will even carry with you, from this point forward?
Ross, you've mentioned the ARC triangle before as being something useful.
Yeah, I think, we talked about filters earlier, and, you can explain the world in so many different ways, but I feel ARC is a helpful way of looking at, any situation where you're interacting with other people and saying, hey, even like, I like that, the measure of reality as like physical distance. Like I will still think about that. Like if I'm kind of standing away from somebody, I'll realize like, oh, I'm kind of like demonstrating that I'm not sharing reality with them, that I, am not comfortable being closer to them. So I would say that's one. And there were other things that I learned, like in my classes, that I went, oh yeah, that's practical advice. And some of it was maybe obvious, but just stated in a new way. And that can be helpful too, because I think if we hear some of the same things over and over, we just start to filter them out. We start to kind of ignore the stimulus. So sometimes it helps to hear things in slightly new ways. But yeah, that's a good example.
Great. Carrie?
I think the only thing that comes to mind, and I do think there's probably other places you can do this, is the idea of recounting. There are some things that it is good to sort of recount until they don't sting. I have a friend who went through a very traumatic episode where she was kidnapped by strangers. This isn't a secret, so I think she'd be comfortable with me sharing it. But she was kidnapped by strangers. She got out. She was shot at. She survived. She's okay. But she went through some sort of special therapy where they were like, this sucks, but you need to tell us the story a bunch of times. And she told me about it, and I was like, oh my God, you did Dianetics! They made you do Dianetics! This isn't some Scientology bitch! She's like, no. It was like a CBT thing. And like, I looked up the hospital, and I was like, okay, it's okay. You can go. I'm allowing you to go. It's not Scientology. Yeah, and you know what, it really helped her. And then I started thinking about it, of course, like there are things I've gone through where I feel better telling this, you tell the story to your friends a few times and you feel better. Of course, there's the bastardized version of that where you're made to tell it more times than you need to, or made to plod through certain aspects of it and cry about it over and over, or made to fake laugh about it and there are ways to certainly screw this up. But I did, after telling my dog dying story, there was like a certain point somewhere in the middle there where I did start to feel relief, where it was nice to tell my friend this story and be listened to, and knowing like Ross knew all the characters in the story. He knew the dog. He cared about me. He was sad for me. And getting to go through that and kind of unpack it was really good. And that was a nice reminder for me that that's a healthy thing to do. So
that's so funny. As you were starting to describe that, Carrie, I was picturing like a graph, where the helpfulness or the pain, I guess, goes kind of down as you're recounting it, and then Scientology just continues so that it goes back up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you stopped at that sweet spot, you'd be doing okay. Yeah. But I agree. That's another one where, like in Catholicism, you can go tell your sins to a priest, and it'll be confidential, and you won't feel like permanently judged, and that's great. That's a rare thing that you have a friendship where you can do that. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Well, the reason that we kept doing it was because we went out in the hall and someone asked me how it was going, and I was like, I think it went really well, actually. Like, I feel, I actually feel a little better. And he was like, a little better. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's still sad. My dog died. And then he's like, you need to go back in.
Right.
Word choice is really important.
Yeah, that's where I feel like I think it's healthy to be like, I feel better than I did, and I'm still a human who feels sad when their dog dies.
Of course. Of course. I was fascinated when I looked you guys up. I saw this and I went, oh man, I have to ask him about this. Now, dig deep in your recalls here. You guys covered or got somehow involved with the Ordo Templi Orientis.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Now I got to ask about this, and I don't know if you know this or not. L. Ron Hubbard was involved with OTO.
Oh, we
yeah.
do. Yes,
okay,
we do.
Parsons. Good. Yeah, we know the history.
Excellent. I figured that you did, but I just,
But of course, he was just investigating them for the government, and that's why he did all the sex magic stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly why. If you read Russell Miller's book, you know that he was running a con on Jack Parsons. Russell Miller's book, of course, is Barefaced Messiah, which is Hubbard's biography. As written by Russell Miller was a British journalist, and he wrote it in like 1986 or 87. Probably the best biography on Hubbard that exists. And,
okay.
Oh yeah, real good stuff.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, amazing book. And
okay.
Anyway, so Hubbard got involved with Jack Parsons in Pasadena, 5 minutes away from where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I grew up.
Carrie was from that area
Where
too.
are you from?
Pasadena. Well, I grew up. I born in Port Hueneme, but then we moved to Pasadena, and I grew up right by the Rose Bowl there, on Lincoln Avenue.
I'm from La Crescenta.
Okay, there we go.
And so OTO is headquartered in La Crescenta.
Really?
Yep. And so when we found it, I was like, holy moly. Because, I mean, for one, we get to go back to my hometown for an investigation. That's fun. But two, if only people in my tiny suburban white Christian town had known there was a sex magic cult in town. Just imagine the reaction.
Oh, man. I can imagine getting involved in that. So Hubbard was involved in that, and that was back in 1947 or so, 46, when Jack Parsons, who was a JPL scientist, was part of this thing. So Hubbard said to have derived a lot of Scientology, or some of Scientology's basics and ideas and concepts from OTO. So with your guys' experience in it, because you certainly have more real-world experience than I do with it, or probably most people, if you went in and did your little deal of going in and checking it all out, what was notice any similarities?
I think we definitely felt like L. Ron Hubbard was cribbing techniques from Aleister Crowley. Just the ability to kind of bluster and just come up with, silly sounding things, and realizing that if you said them with enough confidence and enough, kind of poetic license, that people would take them seriously. And you could get away with saying, was it abracadabra? Like he would put that phrase like in his books, like, really? Really?
No, not abracadabra. It was like abadabraba or something, like three letters off.
Abrahadabra, yeah.
That's it.
It's like, really? And then also some of the symbology, like the thetan, I'm sure that comes directly from the Book of Lies. Like he was using the Greek letters, and so definitely it felt like there was a kinship there ideologically.
Yeah, I do think though that it's mostly in the people themselves and in the text, but in the actual like culture that's built up in those two organizations, I don't think you'd smell it. Like if you didn't know, I don't think you'd see it at all, because OTO has really that whole like do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law idea has really become their whole be all end all. It's very hands off, sort of, I'm tempted to say libertarian, just sort of like, hey, everybody do what you want as long as you're not messing anybody else's thing up.
Yeah, it feels like Hubbard preserved that only for himself in Scientology, and took what I think you're right, Carrie, has kind of like almost a hippie-ish vibe to it, and just overlaid all of this like bureaucracy on top of it.
It's like corporate structure. Yeah.
That's what Hubbard had to contribute to all of this.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, OTO just feels much more mystical and magical and quote unquote culty. I mean, like when you walk into OTO, there are people in robes and candles and
naked priestess,
cookies that may or may not have sperm in them. You do all these funny little dances and rituals where you're crossing yourself backwards and doing all these little turns and walking into a pitch black room so that you can cross yourself.
There is no part of me that is not of the gods.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's what would have scared all the church mothers at my church growing up.
It was so exciting to be there in the dark doing these things, because I think this is everything they warned us about in Sunday school. That for the most part doesn't exist, but they have manufactured it here in this basement in La Crescenta, California.
Yep.
Wow, that is impressive. Okay,
but,
good.
Spoiler, it's the one place we got like directly kicked out of.
Oh. Okay. They found out what you guys were doing?
They didn't save point us. They were like, get the hell out of here. Well, we've learned lessons along the way, and this was one of the instances where we released the first episode and just kept going back, didn't think they'd find it somehow. Well, they found it. It was awkward, one of the most awkward moments of my life.
It was very uncomfortable. But I really wish we had, I mean, in the moment, I don't blame us for not having our wits about us, but I wish we had said, like, I thought it was do what thou wilt. We did what you wilt. We made up a what?
Hey, guys, come on, I'm just doing what I wilt.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's go a little bit more general as we move toward wrapping this up here. What out of all the woo and all the nonsense and all the stuff you guys have looked into so far in the last 5 years that you guys have been doing this, what was your favorite, and why? Carrie?
Well, I'm smiling at Ross because our answer's always the same.
I'm going to say the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. As far as like our favorite people and the thing that always sticks out, it's the Mormons. Like, their philosophy is off, and there's definitely abuse, and it is not a church I would want to grow up in. But
especially if I were gay or
a woman, bad. Bad. But if you want to be a visitor in a church and be treated with the most kindness possible, the Mormons can't be beat. They were so kind to us, and even when we told them why we were there, we came out to them and told them we were journalists and we were making a podcast. They still invited us back, told us we were welcome to come anytime, continued to come even to Ross's birthday party, still invite us to their events.
I'm still on the Elders Quorum email and get regular invites to help people move or volunteer at the food pantry.
Yeah.
Great people.
Just incredibly kind, and I think well-meaning. So I remember them very fondly.
Excellent. It seems that the South Park episode on those guys really nailed it, because it ends on that note that you just described. You know, they're just gonna be the way they're gonna be, and you take it or leave it, but they are who they are. You know.
Yeah.
Boy, yeah. South Park was pretty definitive both on Mormonism and Scientology.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I cannot say enough good things about Trey and Matt. They are definitely top of the line critical thinkers, but they don't ridicule unnecessarily. When they're ridiculing something, it's deserved it.
It's equal opportunity too.
And that too. That's right.
They pull no punches.
Exactly. Now, were there any experiences you guys covered? And I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times, but just wondering, anything you guys covered that you walked away going, "Oh wow, there's something to that," and we didn't think that there was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my most common example of that is speed reading, because I went into that going, that's not physically possible that you can go through a book that quickly, and I still feel that way. But I came away from our particular class that we took with a lot of great suggestions and encouragement to read more, and I did start reading more and have continued that pace. So I would say that's the investigation that really has had the most kind of personal impact on me and changed my way of doing things. So yeah, I came away kind of impressed with that.
Yeah, it does give you some ways to read a little bit faster. They'll kind of make it sound like you could read, a book in 20 minutes.
You can.
When you just won't retain it. You could maybe look at the words, but you won't retain it.
There's the Woody Allen quote, "Oh, I read War and Peace in half an hour. It's about Russia."
Yeah, right. Exactly. For me, the one I always remember is hypnotherapy. What's really interesting about hypnotherapy is, usually when we're looking at whether something isn't legitimate, a medical therapy or a treatment, usually the complaint is, well, it's no better than placebo. Now, the problem with hypnotherapy is basically all they're claiming is placebo. They're saying, if you think that you can get X, you'll make your body do X. Well, that's the placebo effect.
They've got a good point, yeah.
Yeah, you just renamed it hypnotherapy. And so that I really couldn't fault them for that. I was just like, yeah, if you want to turn that into an enterprise, if you want to turn the placebo effect into a whole thing, fine. And I found that when I would go to my hypnotherapist and talk through the stuff that I needed to deal with that week and focus on feeling better about it, I felt better about it, and it wasn't super expensive. I wouldn't use it to cure your cancer. I wouldn't use it necessarily to stop smoking or something really serious that you might need additional help for. But for the stuff I was worried about, like focusing on getting my work done or not freaking out about my boyfriend at the time or whatever it was helpful.
Yeah, I feel like it was working for not for the reasons they were saying it was working, but like you were mentioning, you also have kind of an accountability partner built in. You're going, meeting with this person, they're expecting to hear progress from you, and like we said with auditing, it just helps to talk to someone too. So, kind of helpful, but not for the reasons they said.
Yeah, they did layer on all this weird diagrammy stuff about the
brain
that was just not true.
Right. I've said that about Scientology as well, just what you just commented on, that auditing and Scientology procedures work, but not sometimes work on a limited set of people is how I've always expressed it, because none of it's universal.
Sure.
Like even the ARC triangle, you can find exceptions, but Scientologists are trained to never look for the exceptions, only the times it works,
Right.
But I always stress it's not doing what you think it's doing. Mm-hmm. So you might come out feeling better, but not because you have a reactive mind, or not because an engram is a real thing.
There need not be an engram or reactive mind for this to be effective.
Exactly. Sometimes it just helps to talk.
That's what I really like about your approach, Chris, is that you came away from this as still like a jovial, well-rounded human being, and didn't come away angry. You found things that you could say that you liked and people that you liked, and I respect that, because that seems really rare for people who get away from something so extreme as Scientology.
Yeah, it's been an interesting road, that's for sure. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap up here, just simply because time. I could talk to you guys for another 3 hours, I swear. What have you guys on your show? What have you not yet covered that you're dying to?
Ooh, so much.
Yeah, okay, we have an 8-page list of investigations, and that doesn't count the, 88 emails I have yet to read that are mostly suggestions. And then the other thing is that we try not to give away what we're looking into for obvious reasons. But here are like some of the things we're asked about a lot that we're excited about. Everyone wants Landmark Forum. We know, everybody. We know you want it.
I believe that is either an offshoot of or very, very closely related to Scientology.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Interesting, yeah.
Scientology considers it a squirrel group.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I have heard that before, because it's directly, as Ross was just saying, it's a direct descendant of Est, which was like the 70s.
That's right, which is definitely a squirrel group of Scientology.
Okay.
Warren Earhart, without question, went and got involved in Scientology or studied it, and then ripped off a bunch of stuff from it and made Est.
Okay.
I love learning those connections. That's so cool.
And the connections always lead back to L. Ron Hubbard, though. It's like never anyone else.
Well, if you really want to get an education, all roads lead back to Madame Blavatsky.
Oh, right. Theosophy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All the ascendant master woo-woo and stuff from the 19th and 20th century, it all goes back to her, and she's just plagiarizing stuff from before that. So it's fascinating tracing the lines on this stuff. But anyway, I totally cut you off. What else besides land there?
Well, without giving away too much, there are like some overseas things we really, really want to do that we need the money for. I don't know, Ross, what's on your top list without giving away too much?
Up there with the Landmark Forum, I'd say the other most common one now that we've done Scientology is Jehovah's Witnesses. That's another one people really want. Let's see. What do I have? I'm trying to think, because we have a little part of our document where we call out things we really want to try. Definitely interested in, we already did nootropics, however you want to say it, the drugs that are supposed to enhance your mind, but we also want to try kind of the transcranial electric stimulation.
Direct stimulation, yeah.
So that's another one, hopefully coming down the line.
Oh, and UFO investigations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've already had a lot of experience with UFO groups, and we've joined both the Raelians and the Aetherius Society. But yeah, I think it would be fun to do some actual UFO hunting and some more ghost hunting, too.
Yeah, totally. It's surprisingly hard. It's weird. In LA, there are so many, people who say they're ghost hunters, but they're kind of doing it ironically, that it's hard to find legit ghost hunters. There's all these sort of, I use this term lovingly, but sort of hipsters who are just hanging out and are like, yeah, go into this hotel and then I drink my fancy drink and I look for a ghost. But they don't believe it.
Right.
But we want the people who are out there with their EMF meter who are serious. And that's actually harder to find.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Ghost Hunters is on year 10 or something. It's coming up. I think this is the final season. And I actually commented on Facebook the other day. I was like, 10 years of wandering around in empty houses saying hello.
Yeah.
What a living.
Grown men scaring themselves in the dark.
Yeah. What a way to make a living.
Well, we could look for the ghost of ghost hunters after that.
Ooh.
All right, guys. Well, we're over time here, but listen, thank you very much for being part of this. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about this stuff. And
pleasure. Thanks for having us.
We have a million questions for you, so we'll do this the other way around.
Absolutely. Anytime, anywhere, you just let me know. I'll definitely make myself available for you guys.
Thank you
so much.
And so ends my interview with Ross and Carrie. I had a lot of fun doing that, and they are just great. I can't recommend their show enough. If you haven't checked it out, there is a link to it below on my channel here, so you can go check out their podcast. Thank you very much for coming around. If you have not gotten your fill of logic quite yet, then you know where to get it. The Critical Merchandise store that is now open has all kinds of good, logical, sensible things for you to take a look at. And I hope you do check it out, because your support of my efforts and my show are greatly appreciated. And I wanted to put something out there that I thought you guys would get something out of too. Critical thinking is not just for breakfast anymore. So thanks for coming around, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.